13 years. A man was sentenced to jail for 13 years after he had tried to K 4 of his children. Owen Scott was the type of man who should not have children at all, ever. For one, he was dependent on Class A and Class B, meaning white and also weed, and for two, he did not have the function or capabilities to be a dad, and that was proven when the mad Hampshire man had taken out a hammer and struck his own children when he tried to K them, target area being the head. Now, the dad of 4 is said to have equipped himself with a hammer, put his children in the car, and drove from city to city to city, all with a smile on his face. During the process, he then swung at them as though he was possessed, and it connected, not with one child, but with 4, and these were young children. Let that sink in for a moment. A then 29-year-old Owen Scott had struck his 4 children with a hammer on August 23rd of 2017, and he left them with lifetime injuries. At the time of the near-fatal incident, Scott had scored a few grams of Class A. Despite being an adult and being in the midst of looking after his 3 children and stepdaughter, Owen Scott put the product on the counter, used his card to, and then became under the influence. He should not have been operating a vehicle, let alone having the kids in the back. Now, Scott was said to have been consumed by a bad batch, and it set him off along a dark, dark path. Owen Scott knew better. He had actually become increasingly paranoid in the weeks prior to the incident, which was put down to years of Class A and Class B usage, where the madman was spending upwards of £100 a week on the stuff. His addiction was so bad that Owen Scott was referred to treatment programs a lot of times, but he refused to admit that he had a problem. Rather, he could only admit that he had used recreationally, despite being hooked on it. Now, on the day of the hammer incident, Owen Scott had collected his 3 children and stepdaughter from a former partner's house, that being in Southampton. He then drove from Southampton to the Isle of Wight, and then Liverpool, and then Greater Manchester, aimlessly. Now, Owen had put his children's life in danger even before he produced the hammer, because the dad then drove to Huddersfield. While travelling along the A roads, Owen pressed the acceleration pedal and then reached speeds of upwards of 91 miles per hour before he spotted the Travellers Inn pub on the A629. So what does a man do when he is high off his face and doesn't care for human life at all, not even his own children's? Owen turned the steering wheel and then ended up on the path directly in front of the pub's stone wall before deliberately colliding with it. 91 miles per hour. The children were only aged between 9 months and 8 years old, and some of the children were old enough to understand something was wrong with their dad. Mainly, their dad was doing something so dangerous that it could kill them, but they could not understand why. What set him on this path? After all, the scumbag was their dad. They would love him unconditionally. Now, their confusion was dwarfed by their immense and immeasurable pain after Owen had struck them with the hammer while still in the car, again, target area being the head. 29-year-old Scott Owen was arrested at the scene by police and placed in handcuffs and then told to explain what the hell had happened while paramedics rushed to check on the children. Owen Scott explained, "There are people after me, I have to protect my kids, and the only way to do that is to K them." Now, paramedics looked in the back seat of Owen Scott's Dacia Logan, and they were stunned and appalled and angry to find 21-month-old Leo, 9-month-old Toby, and his stepdaughter, 8-year-old Alicia, suffering from extensive injuries that included broken bones and would leave the kids with lifetime injuries. When Owen Scott went to court, they also heard that Owen's daughter Lucy was left partially paralysed. Her injuries were so severe that part of her skull had to be removed, and she would remain in a wheelchair for life. During the court proceedings, Owen Scott spoke to psychiatrists to determine his functionality and functioning capability, and determine if there was any underlying mental health indicators that had gone unmissed. that could lead or would lead to him trying to kill his children. Again, Owen had struck the children with a hammer, target area their heads, then deliberately ploughed his Dacia Logan car into the Travelers Inn stone wall at a speed of 91 miles per hour. Also, when he did strike the kids with a hammer, this was not once or twice, it was repeated action. And the medical reports indicated that Owen did suffer from short-term psychosis brought on by his consumption of dra, so this was self-inflicted. His brain had been so frazzled that Owen Scott could not recall the start, middle, nor end of the incident, only that he needed to protect his children in the only way that he could think of, and that was to remove them from this earth. In court, Owen Scott admitted to 4 counts of attempted aim of his own children and a separate charge of deliberately driving his car into the wall at high speeds. Now, despite the man being found guilty, Owen's defense team did their best to make a case for Owen, even though they was clutching at straws. What they said is Owen had little or no memory of the events in the car, no matter how many times he tried to recollect his thoughts. And despite it being accepted that Owen Scott did suffer from short-term psychosis at the time of the incident, it was because he thought it was a good idea to... It did not amount to a defense that they could use. Now, Owen Scott was jailed for life, and he was told that he would have to serve a minimum term of 13 years. That meant on average he would serve a minimum of 2.5 years for the pain and suffering that he had inflicted on each one of his children. Now, when that sentence was read out, it was considered unduly lenient for the impact that he had in his own children. The sentence was appealed, and at Sheffield Crown Court, due to the devastation Scott caused to his children, both physical and mental, the anguish, the pain, the horror, and the nightmares, the life sentence was increased to a minimum term of 24 years. Now again, think of this from the kids' perspective. The children will have to grow up with the fact that their dad tried to kill them, and when they try to think of a reason why, there's going to be nothing that makes sense. A dad is someone who teaches you, nurtures you, shows you love, shows you compassion, and shows you how to be a great person, how to function and be responsible in this world. So when that same person tries to kill you for absolutely no reason in such a devastating and heinous and brutal way, you can only think to yourself as a child, what did I do wrong? When again, these children were not to blame at all. Oldest child was 8 years old, and the youngest one was 9 months old. How could you do that to such little beings? However, Owen Scott will have a lot of time in jail to come to terms with just how much of a monster that he is. So does the crime match the sentence? Let me know. And stay safe.